Welcome back to the Soonerscoop.com studios. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya return. We went to a practice today, George. Obviously, it was Oklahoma's second practice of the preseason, and we got into Brent Venables as well, talked to him after practice, but we'll get to that here in a second. George, let's just jump into kind of our thoughts on the open practice. We were out there for about 40 minutes today.
Yep.
It's one of those things. It's not necessarily just stretching like we got with the former coach, but it is a little bit of more interaction. Obviously, 20 or 40 minutes of it. It was good to be out there. It's good to see a bunch of the new guys. It was something that we talked about yesterday here on the YouTube show, just as far as kind of what we wanted to see out there. So let's jump into it. What'd you think? Just first impressions that I guess just jumped out at you right when you walked in. Besides it being 1,000 degrees, a sauna in Oklahoma today.
That was my first takeaway. I was just dripping in sweat while out there. But I don't know. I mean, I think that physically, obviously, that's kind of what you're looking at because, like you said, we get to see quite a bit in terms of individual drills. We don't get to see team. I know there's some people out there saying, well, so-and-so's starting and so-and-so's, running with this group. But really, it's just who's going through the drills first.
It was a bunch of individual drills, which, I think if you're watching this, you're probably down with the, what would it be, nomenclature of what a practice should be?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you just kind of look at guys. I mean, one of the first guys I saw, Javonte Barnes, he looks incredible. I mean, he's a guy that has definitely lived in the weight room this summer. I thought Savion Byrd, that's a guy that I know has been a big topic in the summer. He's a guy that everybody's talking about his weight. He looks like he weighs more than 288 pounds, which is what he's listed at. He looks really good. He was going through drills first, which is somewhat of a good indication that he might be in line to start. I thought the defensive line group, I know that's been obviously a huge emphasis for this group, and we'll get into a little bit about what Brent said about them a little later on, but just there's more bodies there, one, and then two, they're just bigger. I mean, you look at a Dejon Terry, he looks fantastic. I put out a video of him hitting the dummy, and he just looks very physical. I thought Grayson Halton looked really good. Jonah Lawalu, Jordan Kelly. I mean, you're just talking about some guys. Isaiah Coe, I know you and I talked a little bit about him. Just big guys. I mean, they look so much bigger up front than they did. And then I think linebacker was another spot that I hung out and watched a lot. Obviously, that's where Brent is most of practice, so you get to see him interact. Deshaun McCulloch's working with that group. Justin Harrington's working with that group. Two guys that are looking at that cheetah position. And then, you get to see Connor Neer for the first time. He looks physically... Yeah,
he looks great physically.
I mean, he looks physically the part. I know Brent talked a little bit afterwards that he still got a ways to go in terms of learning the defense. And then the one guy that I thought really stood out from a physical standpoint was Jaren Kanick. I thought he looked fantastic. You watch those videos of him going through the bags. He's got great feet. He looks much more comfortable. He's very focused, locked in during practice.
He's a very intense guy.
Oh, so intense. Some of the photos. And he was always second in line. Again, you kind of look at the order of who's going when. He was behind Danny Stutzman, who was the clear, far and away leader of the group, of the entire team.
A lot. I mean, you could tell that it's a little bit different. And I think that it's... it's a role that he's kind of accepting. He talked about it at Big 12 Media today. Obviously, he's talked about it with me on the radio, but it does feel like this is his defense a little bit. Like there's a comfort there.
Yeah, I'd even go further and say I think it's his team. You watch the warm-ups when we first get in there. He's the guy that comes out. He's the one running around, breaking it down, leading the chant. And then you watch him in individual, and he goes over there, and it's in between reps, and he's teaching the young guys. I saw him pull a few of the, Lewis Carter, those kind of guys over to the side saying, hey, this is how you do the rep. This is what we're trying to do. And that goes back to what we heard about player-led practices this summer and wanting to see Danny be that guy. So seeing him do that, he's clearly doing the reps right. I think there was one moment, too, they were working on something where you had two guys, and I think it was Owen Heineke, shout out Bishop Kelly alum.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Screwed up a drill, and he goes, Danny, come over here and show him how to do it. And he pulls Danny up, and Danny goes out and shows him how to do the drill. And that's what you want to see. Those are the little things, the little details that we appreciate you get to see in practice, but that's what you want to see in terms of growth and maturity from this team.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And, talking about the defensive line, obviously Dejon Terry, he looks a little bit different than everybody else. I don't know if it's just one of those things that in the back of your mind, it's like, he played in the SEC. It's a Tennessee guy. But at the same time, just the whole the totality of the group, they do look different. And I think that, when you talk about, and it's something that you've wrote about even with as many guys as they have over 300 pounds nowadays, it looks like a different group. And, you know, what does that mean in the long run? They're obviously going to have to go out and make plays. Brent said that after practice, but they do look better physically. And, you know, I think that the one thing that I thought too was Isaiah Coe kind of stuck out like a sore thumb last year just because he did look so much bigger with everybody around. It's kind of like everybody else looks like him now. And, you know, obviously that's a step in the right direction. Jacob Lacey's a little bit bigger. He had the blue target jersey on, I think, for no contact.
But it's good to see him, though.
With the blood clot issue. But for him to just be out there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I didn't even know if he'd be at practice.
Sure.
So to see him out there and kind of going through warm-ups and doing things on the side, that's what you want to see, because that's another guy that I think that they think can come in and can contribute. I mean, he was the first guy that got in the portal, remember?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a guy that got back in, I think, November, December. So he's somebody that can help him. But you're right. The defensive line as a whole, I mean, even going back to the spring, I wasn't here last fall, but looking back at the spring, the bodies they added in Terry and Peya, and then the guys that put on weight. I mean, Grayson Holton looks fantastic, very explosive. You see him hitting the dummies. I know that Todd Bates has talked a lot about him. I thought Kelvin Gilliam looked really good. Obviously, he's another young guy that maybe can step up, and we talked about it. They're looking for about 6 guys on that interior defensive line. I think they've got 8 or 9 right now, so they're competing for spots, and it's going to be fun to watch who comes out of that group.
That linebacker group, too. I mean, just physically. I mean, obviously, they're going to have to go out and make plays, but Danny Stutzman, Kobe McKenzie, another guy looks like a man out there.
Yeah.
Jaron Kanick, and then obviously Connor Neer. That's a good foursome. I mean, it's a good quartet at least. We'll see how it all breaks down once you get there. We did spend some time over with the safeties today. I know that. What'd you tell me about Peyton Bowen?
He looks like he floats.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is that's what I used to always say when I covered the Broncos. Pat Surtain, who's one of the best corners in the league, you watch him in warm-ups or drills or whatever, he looks like he's floating on the grass, and that's what it looks like watching Peyton Bowen. And I don't know if Peyton Bowen's going to be as good as Pat Surtain, but that's what you want to see when you're watching those drills. Is he's somebody that you can tell is very good in open space. He's a guy that is obviously a ball hawk. I mean, we saw that in the spring game. So he's somebody that just stands out, and he just looks. He does not look like a true freshman.
Yeah.
Like he definitely looks like somebody that can play multiple positions. I know we're going to get into Cheetah in a second, but it sounds like he's a guy that's working a little bit at Cheetah, and they're going to do some different, schematics, and whether that's 3 safeties or you bring in an extra linebacker or a pass rusher. Obviously, Peyton Bowen's probably not going to be rushing the passer, but when it is a 3rd and long and you can bring in an extra coverage guy, I think you want to have a guy like Peyton Bowen on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Reggie Pearson was another guy today that kind of stuck out. And, he's tackling a dummy, and you'll see the clip right here, but he's a very physical guy, and I think that, obviously Dylan Gabriel knows everything about that, getting knocked out of the game down in Lubbock.
And I think that that's been an emphasis, and Brenton talked a little bit about it, on Tuesday and today as well, is just being more physical overall.
Sure.
And I think you can see that. And again, it's hard because they don't have pads on. They're not hitting real people, but you can tell there's a more physical presence with this group, whether it's the defensive line putting on more weight, adding a couple bodies in the secondary that just look bigger and more physical. I mean, even a Gentry Williams stands out, right? A Kanick Walker, those type of guys that they just didn't have a year ago on that side of the ball. And we didn't get to watch a ton of the offense. I know that there was a few receivers that kind of stood out, and Brent talked about them. But defensively, you can definitely tell that just they look more physical. And we'll have to see it on the field, right? Until they play an actual game, we don't really know. But they definitely look like they did some work this summer.
It was hot out there. I can say that. It was miserable out there. It's kind of hard to imagine that they're practicing in this, here and through the rest of the year. And it seemed like it was a pretty intense practice, too. I told you on the way over there, it seems like, you get through that first practice and there's a little bit of, you're just excited to be back out there. And then it kind of sinks in that, hell, this thing's going to be for the next couple of weeks.
A couple guys were getting sick there in the individual period. And then obviously Brent was talking afterwards about hydration. He doesn't want guys to fail the hydration test. And it sounds
do they have a piss chart like Tom Herman?
I'm sure they do.
Interesting.
It's funny that everybody made fun of Tom Herman for that, but I'm pretty sure most programs have that. So, but I know you and I would have definitely failed because we were out there for 5 minutes and I was like, this is too much. And then even post practice, holding the mic.
Yeah.
I was sweating. So yeah, it's brutal out there. But
failing a urine test would be the least of my worries. I think I'd fail a lot of tests. You know what I mean? It is going to be be kind of interesting, though. Let's move forward. Obviously, we'll get back out there at some point here in the coming weeks, I believe. Monday.
Yep.
We have another viewing session on Monday, so hopefully the weather's going to cooperate a little bit more. If you want to watch any of the practice that we got today with some of the videos, some of the Scoop HD, it is up on the YouTube page, Sights and Sounds. You can see it from today. So let's get into Brent Venables. We talked to him after practice today. Obviously, talked to him on Tuesday after the local media day, but I guess this is a little bit different because he's coming off the practice field. There was some actual football stuff talked about today. Where do you want to start? You want to start with the Cheetah position, and then we'll get into some of the top performers? All right, that was something that you asked. Yep. It was kind of a one of those things that we talked about yesterday. How are they going to use these guys? Who are going to be the guys that are going to be involved? So what did Brent Venables... Actually, we'll just go to the tape. Here's Brent Venables on the Cheetah position.
I think it's all the guys that there's a group of them, and we're trying to develop some both depth and versatility so that you can always keep your best player on the field, players on the field. And then we're really working a lot of different combinations on both sides of the ball. Challenge the coaches we got a lot of guys that have versatility. You don't want to water down anybody because they've got too much on their plate, but the right ones that we feel like maybe are the right ones that can do multiple things, let's give them the opportunity here early in camp, see what they have a knack for, what their acumen is. And but there's a group of them, from Justin and Deshaun to Peyton and Reggie. Those are the main group of guys.
Brent Venables talking the Cheetah position. So it's interesting. I mean, you got 4 guys right there that, two are kind of similar, I guess, in the same regard, and then you have 2 safeties. I do think that they're going to work maybe a Lewis Carter in there to see what he can do. But, just kind of your overall thoughts on what that position could be.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because, like you said, you've got a couple of linebackers in Justin Harrington, who, I guess he originally played safety, and then you've got Deshaun McCulloch, who is just this freakish athlete that I don't think anybody really knows what to do with him. And we kind of talked about him a little bit in, his footwork's not great at times.
Well, it's one of those things, like, remember during the spring, we would come back and it's just like, I don't get it. But then we'd go back out for a live period and he'd blow somebody up.
Right. Or the spring game. I mean, you go back and you watch the spring game and he was phenomenal. So maybe he's just one of those guys that he doesn't look great tackling the dummy, or he doesn't look great going through the bags, and then he just is great in space. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with him, because they do have options at that Cheetah position. And I think they feel really good about Justin Harrington. He's another guy who was super vocal today, obviously a leader on this team. And I know everybody is tired of hearing about the offseason hype on Justin Harrington, but I do think he's going to be a guy that plays some football for him. And I don't know what packages they're going to do, because when you look at Reggie Pearson and Peyton Bowen, they're just different players than, a Deshaun McCulloch or a Justin Harrington, or even Samuel Omosigo, who I thought looked great out there. He's a guy that they're also apparently working at Cheetah. You mentioned Lewis Carter. So they've got options there. I just think it's going to look different, whereas, Deshaun White played the majority of those snaps. I think you're going to see some rotating there. I think you're going to see some situational football. If it's a 3rd and long, do you bring in McCulloch to rush the passer, or do you bring in a Peyton Bowen to play the pass? So I think you're going to see some different guys rotate in there. It's just one of those positions. Everybody loves to talk about it because your best athlete usually plays there, some of your best players. But I don't think we're really going to know what they're going to do there. And I don't think there's going to be a definitive starter at the Cheetah. I think it's going to be by situation and opponent basis. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens there. But I guess the good news is you do have options. It seems like they have a lot more options than they maybe had a year ago.
Definitely.
And, obviously you answer that through the transfer portal with a couple guys. And, even somebody that, I guess he's more of a safety, and obviously, but Billy Bowen I thought looked really good. I don't know why it just kind of popped into my brain. Watching the linebackers, though, go through drills, OU should open that up to fans in charge, and that could be a new NIL front, because it's almost a little bit of a religious experience watching Brent Venables coach the linebackers.
Man, he chewed out Connor Neer and Deshaun McCulloch today. There's a clip somewhere on the internet. I'm sure you can find it, but he ripped him a new one for doing the drill wrong, and he's just so intense in that atmosphere, and you can tell. I mean, I know that Ted Roof is the linebackers coach technically, but it's Brent Venables. I mean, he's leading that group, and it's fun to watch.
Defensive linemen. Obviously, we talked about it. That group looks a little bit differently. Here's Brent Venables on his defensive tackle group, looking good physically.
Yeah, again, you got to play. Everything happens really fast, so it's not just big. You got to be able to play fast and play with leverage and pad level and the point of attack, and so it's everything. That's a one of the hardest positions to play, and mentally and physically. And so we think we're a little better there. I want to see it over time. You know, I want guys to prove it, and that's across the board. It's not just D-line. I want, show me. And it's easy to come out here in shorts and run around and look good, but that growth and development is going to be everything. But really, it's the whole defense. But we do have, you know, a little more depth and a few more bodies across the whole front.
So that was Brent Venables talking about the defensive tackle group, and obviously, you know, they're going to have to go out and do it on the field. We talked about Deshaun Terry earlier. Isaiah Coe, even a guy like a Jordan Kelly, who's coming back for what seems like his 60th year at Oklahoma. Yep. He looks good physically right now. So you do have options. It's kind of like the Cheetah position. I think I'm a little bit more confident for some reason, maybe, in the defensive tackle group, because there are some returners. It's a good mix match of people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Brent talked about it. Definitely got more competitive depth there. Lots of guys that they think can come in and can contribute. And they got bigger. I mean, we talked a lot about it, but they have gotten bigger. So it's going to be fun to watch. But it's not like you mentioned, it's not like the wide receiver group on the other side, and we'll get into them, is, you know, a lot of unproven and guys that, again, a lot of depth, but what do they really look like? Whereas I feel a little bit more confident about the defensive line because they did bring in some guys with some production, whereas wide receiver, it's like you still have a group of guys that you're looking to see who can step up.
I'm really interested to see what Jonah Laulu looks like inside. I mean, he physically looks great.
He's up to 295 pounds. I saw him without his pads on after practice, and he does not look. I mean, he just looks like a beast, like a brick wall. So I wonder what he can look like. And I know, you know, in the pass rush, that's where they think he can really excel on the interior. So he's going to be fun to watch for sure.
Brent Venables was asked about top offensive performance. It's only been 2 days of practice, but it sounds like there was a couple guys that had a pretty good day.
Dylan had some really nice plays. JG made a nice play in the end zone. I think it was Jaquez. Stog had a great back shoulder. We were in great position, and he just ripped it from him. And I love that. I love to see guys make plays, because that's the game. If all things are equal, who's going to make a play? That's the name of the game. You know, we're going to give them a whole bunch of layups. Don't freaking airball layup. All right, and that's, you know, we got to get out of our own way. That's Oklahoma not losing Oklahoma, and that's a real thing. And we got to do that first. We got to not, you know, be in the red on a hydration test on the second morning of fall camp. That can't happen, okay? But, you know, the playmaking, you know, we had some guys make sacks and all that, but wearing shorts, let's continue to, and I saw, again, Jackson had a couple of balls here yesterday and today where he's throwing guys open and throwing it before they're open, and how do you see that? So he's made some good plays, and again, Dylan's had a couple of really, really well-placed balls, you know, in the red zone where we got to get better. We were not very good in all the critical situations, red zone and third and fourth down, and the middle eight. We got to be better there, and so we've spent a lot of time. And so I love to see some back and forth, and we saw that here these first couple of days.
I like to hear that. I like to hear Jaden Gibson's name.
Yeah, no, I mean, Gibson's a guy, we talked a lot about him, right? He's a guy that, you know, showed some promise last year at times, got some opportunities, didn't really take advantage of them. Wasn't great in the spring, right? At least in the spring game, he didn't stand out. And so this was a big summer for him. He was a guy that I think some people were like, well, maybe he'll hit the portal, right? So to hear that he was in the end zone today making a nice play, that's what you want to hear. Now, again, like all these guys, you want to see it on Saturdays. You want to see it in a real game, in the scrimmages that I'm sure they'll have. But definitely a guy that you want to hear about. Petaway, not surprising, right? He mentioned Petaway very briefly, but all the buzz has been about Jaquez Petaway in the summer. And so he's a guy, it sounds like, even as a true freshman, can come in and play. And then how about Austin Stogner?
Yeah, it's a little bit of reminiscent of, what would that have been, 21 Bedlam?
Yeah.
When he took the ball away in the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's shown flashes of being a really good tight end.
Sure.
You know, can he be what Braden Willis was a year ago? We'll see. You know, obviously Braden was a huge part of that offense, but if Austin can come in and be a big red zone target, maybe that's what they need. I mean, they weren't great in the red zone a year ago, and Brent talked about getting better there. Maybe Austin can be a guy that can really help in that.
All right, let's get into what everybody probably heard in that last clip. Jackson Arnold, sounds like he did really well today. It's obviously one practice. There's going to be some highs. There's going to be obviously some lows. But some of the stuff that Brent talked about as far as just throwing guys open.
Yeah.
That perks your ear up for a true freshman.
Well, and you watch him throw the ball, and everybody says this about good quarterbacks, but the ball does come differently, come out of his hand differently. I mean, he's a guy that can definitely spin it, has a lot of velocity on it, was very accurate in high school. So it's not surprising that he's standing out. I think for Jackson, it's more of, can he get a grasp of the offense? Can he start to build some of that rapport with the receivers that obviously Dylan has a little bit of a leg up there. Now, there's no competition there, right? They've said plenty of times Dylan's going to be the starter, but I do think it puts a little pressure on him, right? When you have a guy that talented.
And I think that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah. It makes Dylan better, right? I mean, that's what you always hear is competition brings out the best of you. And so I'm sure those two are going back and forth. And it sounds like Dylan's had a good camp. He's definitely sounds like he's improved in situational football, had some nice throws in the red zone, Brent said. So I think that's only good news to hear. And again, everybody's going to take that clip and say Jackson should be the starter.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm sure he still has a little bit of learning to do. I know Brent talked a little bit about that at the end, but it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that he's throwing the ball really well in practice.
It's early, but it was good to get back out there. It feels like Oklahoma football is sort of back. I mean, we're 2 practices in now. I believe they go with shells tomorrow, take Sunday off, and then we'll be back out there on Monday.
And I think, is it pads on Monday? I don't know.
I believe so.
Maybe so.
I thought that's what he said.
Yeah, and we'll get to talk to some players, it sounds like Monday and Tuesday, as well as maybe Jeff Lebby and Ted Roof. So looking forward to that and hearing from those two guys.
Very good. If you want to see the Brent Venables post-practice interview, that's also on Sooner Scoop YouTube page. For George Stoya, I'm Eddie Brodasevich from the Soonerscoop.com studios, a wrap-up from day number 2, Oklahoma preseason.